Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Pete Dougherty here on a lovely Friday in Green Bay. Pete, happy new Taylor Swift album day if you celebrate.
It's a big day, huh?
It is.
I can't say I listened to her very much, but actually the songs that I've heard, they're really good. I'm sure. I mean, she's obviously a super talented person, but I guess it's a big day for you, huh?
Hey, I stayed up. Since we're in the Central Time Zone, it came out at 11 p.m. for me last night. So
How'd you like it?
I will say, expert analysis here. I wasn't crazy about the initial tracks. Like they were good and there were some good moments, but I wasn't crazy about them. But then at 3 a.m., she released 7 additional tracks. And I listened to that while I was getting ready this morning, and those were really good.
So I don't know if you're the same, but I can't tell whether I like a song or like an album. I've got to hear it 3 times. Like every once in a while, there'll be a song where the first time I hear it, it kind of just, oh, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
But I've really liked a lot of songs where it took, and albums where it took 3 listens before I really could make the judgment.
Yes. Our colleague Nicole Minner at Fox 11, she's a massive Taylor Swift fan. She sits down and listens to it all the way through 3 times every time a new album comes out.
Yeah, I know that's the way to do it in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about the Packers as well.
Oh yes, they have a game.
Yeah, they have a game this weekend. It got overshadowed by, Taylor's new album. Anyways, Packers do have a game this weekend. They will travel to D.C. to take on the Washington Commanders. It's a matchup of a 3-3 versus a 2-4 team. But Pete, Matt LaFleur just made a point in his press conference that I want to get your opinion on. And he said, obviously he was not making any excuses, but he said, you look around the league right now, there's a lot of 500 teams. And there are, I think there's only one undefeated team left, the Eagles. Are they the only undefeated team still out there?
I think so, yeah. And you got San Francisco 3-3, the Rams. Who else? There's a couple.
The Tampa Bay Bucks are 3-3.
Bucks, and there might even be one more. Teams that everybody thought was going to be good, and right now they're all 3-3. But they're not all 3-3s are equal, also, right?
Right. But that he just kind of made a point that that's kind of the state of the NFL right now. Tom Brady said a couple of weeks ago he looks around the NFL right now and he just sees a lot of bad offense. How much of this is the Packers versus how much is just this is the state of the game right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's the Packers. They are just really struggling on offense, and they haven't found anything that works. Even Matt LaFleur said after the game they really don't have anything they can hang their hat on. And they got to find it. They're just groping now. Just because they haven't found it doesn't mean they won't. Because I still think, and look, I could be all wrong here, but I still think there's a lot of talent on that team, and a lot of it will come down to finding some things that work and that help the quarterback play better than he has. Because he's among the players and obviously the most important who have not played up to the level of the last couple of years.
We do have a couple of questions coming in, so let's just go ahead and hop to them because they're addressing some of the stuff we were going to talk about anyways. Rebecca asks, she says, hi, folks. Hi, Rebecca. So if Jenkins moves to guard, is it right or left? Pete, if that happens, where do you think he should go, and what sort of musical chairs domino effect does that have along the line?
Yeah, that's a good question because, LaFleur kind of addressed it yesterday, the things you have to think about, because he basically said, so do you move one guy or do you move 2 guys? Meaning, do you move Jenkins to right guard, or do you move him to left guard and move Runyon to right guard? They prefer to not have all those moving pieces, but I mean, left guard is where this guy went to the Pro Bowl. So I guess if I had to guess or bet, I would guess it would be left guard, but I can't say, I'd put the odds really high at that because although Runyon's played a lot of right guard in his career, so that to me makes the most sense. But if they want to limit how much they're moving guys around, it could be to right guard. I don't know what you think, but my bet would be left guard for Jenkins.
Something that LaFleur said, or no, I think it was on our Green 19 podcast yesterday, was that you almost just need to put him at the right side to let him go through those growing pains because that's where your hole is right now, which makes sense. I hate to call anybody out, but your weak link right now along that line is Royce Newman.
Yeah.
And so Jenkins being at left or right, I don't even think needs to have so much to do with Jenkins versus what do you do to shore up that right side, which is your issue right now. And so
that could very easily be their thinking. And, they've done things that have surprised us in the past. I remember when they played Kelly at tackle, a playoff game, I was surprised they pulled Nyman after he'd done okay all season. So, yeah, who knows what they're thinking. They'll have reasons for it, whether it ends up being the best move or not. I think you're right, though. In the end, it's less important which guard Jenkins plays than that they will upgrade that position a lot by having him at a guard and Newman not playing, because the difference between those two players is huge.
Pete, while we're on this subject, so much of what they do along the offensive line this week is going to be possibly the key to the game, because this Washington team, and there's a question in here about being confident in the Packers winning that we'll kind of touch on this overall more, but this Washington team is not more talented than this Packers team in pretty much every area except possibly in the trenches. That Washington front four has 3 first-rounders on it. If Chase Young was playing, it'd be 4 first-rounders in the front four. They're so strong. They're 4th in the league in sacks. They have 19 sacks this season. Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, who else is in there? Montez Sweat. I mean, that's such a stout front four. And so do you move your line around and possibly even move your game plan around to bring more blockers in just this week and kind of get through this week? Because
I was just looking that up when, because we have to make our picks today and get those in. So I just looked it up, and they lead the league in quarterback hits too, besides being tied for 4th in sacks. So they can really, you're right, they can really get after it. And that's even without Chase Young. I mean, which you say, another front. I mean, he's their best guy, and they're still a pretty dominant front four. And this is a really tough matchup because the Packers line is struggling. And even if they put Jenkins in there, it's not a given that they'll play well this week. It could take a couple of weeks for things to gel. So I think this is a really tough matchup. And if Nyman's at right tackle, if they're concerned about how, his pass protecting there, because he's moved from left to right, so everything's the opposite for his bucket step and all that, they may have to keep a back end more often or line up their tight end there and have him chip, or at least line up on that side so the rusher has to go around him, or either way, and make it a little easier for Nyman. So yeah, I think there are some real adjustments they're going to have to make.
Rebecca just has a follow-up to that question. What is the strength of our O-line for run game, assuming they make the changes with Yosh and Jenkins? Inside zone, power, or outside zone?
Yeah, probably both. They become more of a power team, haven't they? But with Jenkins, because when they run the power stuff, their guards pull sometimes, but their center pulls a lot too. But Jenkins is a superior run blocker. So that should help their inside zone running game, I would think. And Nyman is a good run blocker also. So they they become a better run blocking team, with Newman out and Nyman and Jenkins at guard and Nyman at tackle. So I think they could do both, but I would think their run game and their inside protection will both beef up considerably with Jenkins in there. Then the question is, how well does Nyman hold up at right tackle?
Matt asked, why this week do you seem to have confidence in the Packers winning based upon what? Matt, before Pete hops in, I'm just going to give my answer. There are very few get-right games in the NFL, but I think this is one of them. Other than that front four, this Packers team is more talented across the board.
They are. I really agonized over who to pick, and I'm sick of picking them and being wrong. So I basically said, because of the tough matchup up front, and I don't think Taylor Heineke's bad at all. I don't know that he's any worse than Carson Wentz, to be honest with you.
Andy provides something different.
Yeah, and he, just having him play could give them a boost. And he's not as talented as Wentz, but he's got some moxie to him, and there's a lot to like there. So I just went with the Packers are guilty until proven innocent. So I picked Washington 21-20 or 24-23, I think maybe it was. But you're right, though. The Packers, aside from the front four, the Packers are definitely a more talented team. I think Washington's got a pretty good receiving core too, where the Packers aren't real strong there. But yeah, you got Aaron Rodgers against Heineke and The Packers are 4.5-point favorite for a reason.
Man, you're sitting here talking me into picking Washington.
you were extra smart last week. You picked against the Packers.
I just didn't see them winning that game.
Yeah, you were right.
But like this is such a trenches league, and the Washington's arguably stronger in the trenches right there.
Yeah. It's and look, maybe I remember having this. This is going back to the early 2000s when Larry Bechtel was their Packers offensive line coach. I remember they had a really bad. I couldn't even tell you who it was against. They had a really bad game, and the next week I don't even remember who they were playing, but it was somebody with one of the best front fours in the league. And I remember all week everybody writing and talking about, man, after that game, they are really in trouble this week. Mm-hmm. And their line went out and played their best game of the season. And I can't remember who it was against, but I distinctly remember. And that actually happened a couple times during that time. So who knows? Maybe they make the change. And after being just wholly embarrassed last week, maybe they come out and play and play a much, much better game. That's not that uncommon in this league.
Matt LaFleur has talked a lot this week too about like his message to the guys is to get back to having fun, or not even necessarily to get back, but to remember to have fun playing ball. And Pete, I know you wrote about that today, and it's been, at least to me, noticeable at practice in the locker room this week compared to the last couple of weeks, like a concerted effort. So much so that like I asked AJ Dillon yesterday, like, are y'all like consciously like remembering those words as you're at practice? And he said, yeah, because that's what we needed to be reminded of.
And I just think this is so interesting. And what jumped out at me was those videos you posted. That was you, right? With Stokes coming out. They go in the Hudson Center and then they come out, and Stokes coming running up to you and having a little fun with you just for a couple seconds, and then it was Stokes and Alexander the next day.
Yeah, Stokes and Junior on Thursday.
So, and they didn't have cell phones back in the mid '90s, but if they did, if the Packers had lost 2 straight under Mike Holmgren, I mean that place. It was like the locker room was like a morgue. Or like a wake. It was so quiet in there. And when there was no way on this earth that any player, if there were cell phones back then, would have run up to you if the Packers had lost 2 straight and done that. There is 0.00000 chance of that happening. It's so different. And it really strikes me that this young breed of coaches who've grown up with, more individuality in the league, with free agency, all of those things are, they're not, it's just a given that all those things exist. They work with them instead of trying to prevent them, these young new coaches. And it's just struck me as a huge difference between even 10 years ago with LaFleur. They've lost 2 straight games, and his message wasn't, batten down the hatches and, everybody tighten up and, all that stuff. It was, he released pressure instead of increasing it. I don't know which is the best way. Holmgren was a great, great coach. But I think it illustrates how the game has changed, though.
Right. And some of that has to do with how kids have changed.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The players have changed, so the coaches changed.
Other than Aaron Rodgers and Mason Crosby, a large part of this team, that they are still kids. And so I think that's just how a different, to your point, how sort of the world has changed.
What's kind of funny is because you were there at Rodgers yesterday, right? Because when he was asked about that, he didn't give it a full-throated endorsement, but he's the oldest guy on the team, right? So, he's not, even though he's been part of this process through 15 years, he still came in when things were a little different. I think you're completely right. It's guys, the players are different. It's just they grow up differently, and it's just a whole different. I just think it's really interesting, and I'll be curious to see, how the Packers play this weekend.
And Rodgers' point to it was still a good point because he, like you said, he didn't give it a full-throated endorsement, but he said, you have fun when you're winning, and you win when you play loose. And he essentially was saying, when you're having fun, you play loose. So when you play loose, you can play better.
Yeah, and he said, I think he kept going on that. He said, if you're loose, it's because you're prepared, and if it's prepared, it's because you put in the time during the week. So, and he's right. All those things are part of that change.
What LaFleur had said too, because LaFleur had said essentially the same thing.
Yeah, and they got to do their work, and it's it's not going through the motions work. It's deeply engaged work, But I just thought it was really interesting that he must have sensed also maybe that whatever he did last week tightened his team up more than it helped, and it ended up hurting them more than it helped them. I wonder if that happened too.
Pete, I know you've got to get out of here. I've got to go to practice. Just real quick, 30 seconds, because we've got a ton of questions about them. Do you see this team making a trade for a wide receiver before the deadline?
I do. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm thinking it will. I don't think they trade a first or second round pick, maybe not even a third, unless they got a very good player. But I do think if I had to bet, I would bet they end up making a move. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And I know Claypool has been on the tongues of everyone. I like this comment from YouTube to look at Hunter Renfrow. A low salary. Do the Raiders dump him now that they've got Devontae? Could be tick for tack. Just trade those two receivers.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of guys out there who we don't even realize might be available. But so I'm sure they're exploring all that. And they've got
Elijah Moore has now asked for a trade.
Was that
Elijah Moore from the Jets?
Yeah, I saw that. So, they got till November 1st, so it's not like they have to do it today. But deadline spur action.
Yeah. Well, Pete, I'm going to let you get out of here. Y'all make sure to read Pete's column from today that's now up on PackersNews.com, and then we'll have a full practice report for you later today as well. Pete, thanks as always. We'll see you guys next time.